In this video, we're going to talk about the posterior chain, what it is, why it's important, and why you need to make it a priority in your training program. I'm going to share with you 4 key tips that you can implement right away to start strengthening your posterior chain immediately. Stick around to the end because I'd like to share with you a secret that's really the key to starting the engine that will make this thing work or not. It's at the end. Stick around.
Hi, I'm Dr. Beau.
I'm Dr. Dan.
And we are Two Fit Doctors. So if you're like me, when I heard this term for the first time, you're wondering, what is the posterior chain? The posterior chain is a group of muscles that are responsible for keeping us erect and upright. We consider the primary muscle groups involved in the posterior chain to be splenius capitis, splenius cervicis, the trapezius, spinalis thoracis, longissimus thoracis, and iliocostalis lumborum. And then in the upper leg, the gluteus maximus, semitendinosus, semimembranosus beneath it, the biceps femoris, and then in the lower leg, the gastrocnemius and the soleus.
I'm a chiropractor who has a background in strength training and powerlifting. I have a small strength-specific gym where I've trained athletes of all caliber, local sports teams, and weight loss clients. My training and rehab emphasis has always revolved around strengthening the spine. There's much research showing how strengthening the posterior chain helps low back pain from recurring, improves spinal alignment and posture, and even longevity. Research references are listed in the comments section below. The posterior chain of muscles helps form your posture and protects your spine. It plays a critical role in supporting you during daily activities. Unfortunately, sitting turns off the posterior chain musculature. This often leads to muscle imbalances, weakness, and tight hip flexors, which can wreak havoc on the lower back.
Hi, I'm Dr. Beau with Two Fit Doctors. When we're talking about building an iron posterior chain, it's really essential for you, the lifter, that you grasp this next concept. When we look at the lumbar spine, that's the lower back. The lower back, of course, has 5 vertebrae in it. Those lumbar vertebrae are very broad, okay? And then in between every pair of vertebrae, you're probably aware that there's a disc, hopefully one that's healthier and thicker than this is in you. When we look at the lumbar spine here, let's just envision that we could take, say, a piece of duct tape and lay it across the front of the lumbar column, across 2 vertebrae and the disc. So picture something like this. This illustration will make sense in a minute. So let's just say that we've placed a piece of duct tape like this. That duct tape now serves to protect and bring some integrity into the movement that exists between the vertebrae and the disc. It also helps to reinforce the disc and provides another layer of protection to the disc. Well, let's just say that rather than 2 vertebrae, we could do it to every pair of vertebrae and even lay another piece of duct tape in front of that. Well, what you'd end up with is you'd end up with something like this, okay? Well, now what you've got is you've got each individual pair that's protected by an inner layer, and now you've got another layer laying on top of this. That, once again, reinforces and brings about more integrity to the movement of the lumbar spine and even more protection to the disc itself. Well, let's just say we could add one more layer. If we add one more layer, now we end up with this scenario. You end up with something that looks very similar to this. In essence, what we've now done is we've constructed the anterior longitudinal ligament. The anterior longitudinal ligament exists in all of us, and it is a very thick, very broad fibrous ligament with 3 layers, hence the illustration. The ligament protects from extension injuries, and there are a lot of people that would argue that extension injuries are worse than flexion injuries. Extension injuries do not cause disc failure typically, almost unheard of. It's flexion injuries that cause disc injuries. So when you look at the lordosis and the lumbar spine, if you are doing things that strengthen your posterior chain, you're going to protect your lumbar spine by having that normal lordosis that you want that enables you to dissipate weight and to act like a coil or a spring. When you get into the scenario where you're in flexion and you've lost that curve. Now what happens is the anterior longitudinal ligament doesn't serve you as well. It does limit extension movement of the vertebrae, but unfortunately the disc starts to open up to the posterior. When that happens, now you're in the situation where you can have disc bulges or disc failure. So that's where we get into herniations, ruptures, and so forth. Now, there is also a posterior longitudinal ligament. The posterior longitudinal ligament, however, is very different from the anterior. It's very thin and it runs down the back of the column of each vertebrae or through the canal, through the spinal canal. It does not provide the protection the anterior longitudinal ligament does. So when you end up having a bulge or a herniation, it's going to deviate to either side typically of the posterior longitudinal ligament. This ends up causing the complications of disc failure, which we've talked about. In everything that we're teaching you how to build an iron posterior chain to safeguard and prevent this type of injury.
Oddly enough, as important as it is, weakness of the posterior chain is practically an epidemic when it comes to the general population, and this even includes the fitness industry. You can see it in their posture as it slumps over time, shoulders roll forward, kyphosis develops despite their workout, and it keeps getting worse the older you get. If you're working out correctly, this should not happen. You can prevent this process and even improve your posture by developing your posterior chain. As older athletes, we have seen tremendous results by incorporating exercises directly targeting the posterior chain with both high and low reps. Results include better balance, better posture, and strength carryover to other lifts. I can also tell you this, when you learn how to train the posterior chain correctly and start focusing on it, and you go from weak, imbalanced posterior chain to balanced and strong posterior chain, some people feel renewed energy levels, some sleep better, some people have much less pain. You will feel different. You will feel better.
Yeah, that looks good. That looks good. There you go. Yep. Let's go. That looks good. Good. Awesome. So, hey, good job.
Hi, I'm Glenn. I'm a retired oral maxillofacial surgeon and diet-controlled diabetic for about 12 years. 4 years ago, when I retired, and my older brother recommended, who is a emergency physician and also does life extension medicine, recommended that I do resistance training, weight-resistant training. My youngest son, who's also an emergency medicine physician, also recommended, as did my family physician. So I ended up at the gym with Dr. Dan, Dr. Beau, and after 3 months, I was surprised to find that my A1C had dropped 0.4 points with no change in my diet after it had steadily been going up for about 1.5 years, 2 years. That was the immediate benefit, but because of that, because there was no change in my diet, I also continued the resistance training for 3 years now, a little over 3 years, and have, to my surprise, found that my posture is much better. The hunch that older people get and that I was developing has gone away due to the posterior chain training. And I work with the scouts and have walked all of my life. But I've found that this has given me better endurance and better strength in the field, and overall has made me healthier.
Tip number 1, warm-up reps count. One of the best things you can do for your posterior chain is warm it up properly. One of the biggest mistakes we see in the gym when it comes to injuries is lifters not taking enough time to warm up or not warming up the right muscles. We take at least 30 minutes to warm up. That's before we even get under a bar. We use a method of high repetition exercises targeting specific muscle groups that we're going to use that day. Just want to give a thumbs up to Matt Winning. He also has a YouTube channel. I would highly recommend subscribing and watching all of his content. Below is a link to Matt's videos in our comments section. Besides being a great lifter, another of Matt's claims to fame is he was able to avoid any serious injuries during his lifting career. Since I have also adopted this method with my team, I found the same thing. Less injuries and healthier lifters. Warm up using 1 to 3 exercises targeting muscle groups you will use in your lift that day. For example, if you're going to squat, warm up with ham curls, 4 sets of 25, and back raises, 4 sets of 25. Tip number 2, use the safety squat bar. The safety squat bar is that strange looking bar with padding around the neck and shoulders. It often has handles in the front. If your gym even has one, it's probably in the corner gathering dust. That being said, if you want to strengthen your posterior chain, the safety squat bar is a must. For the fastest results, use the safety squat bar as much as possible. This means a minimum of once a week. We often use it twice a week when we're not competing. For example, Monday we'd squat with the safety squat bar, and then Friday we might use it for good mornings. Gyms that have a collection of bars or a section of their facility devoted to strongman or powerlifting will usually have a safety squat bar. If you have a garage gym, this is a must-have piece of equipment that will do more for you than most machines. If you want to quickly improve the strength of your posterior chain, also train your core for strength, but especially emphasize the obliques. Training your core for strength is different than what most people think, however. If you want to strengthen your core, stop doing endless bodyweight crunches and Roman chair sit-ups and start holding weights. Use resistance whenever possible when training your core. Only do 1 or 2 exercises with 2 or 3 sets apiece. Keep reps in the 8 to 10 range when you're using weight. Train your abs once a week, not more than twice, and not if you're still sore. We usually train abs at the end of a squat or a deadlift day. Just like all other body parts you want to improve strength on, train your abs the same. Choose an exercise you will repeat 2 to 3 times in a row and progressively add volume to the reps and sets. For the greatest and most noticeable improvement in core strength, train your obliques 70% of the time. This means 7 out of 10 ab sessions you're either training obliques alone or adding them as one of the other exercises. So as a synopsis about training your core for strength: 1. Using weights whenever possible. Use resistance training. 2. Progressively adding volume, more reps and sets over time. 3. 3 to 8 sets, 1 or 2 exercises max per session. 4. Train your abs once a week, no more than twice, and not if you're still sore. And finally, train your obliques 70% of the time. Tip number 4. Choose posterior chain accessories that target the right muscles. Unfortunately, not all accessory exercises have a strength carryover. If you want to get stronger, it's important you choose accessory exercises that will support your main lift. While the squat and deadlift are great builders of the posterior chain themselves, you will see the fastest results when you add the right accessory lifts directly following. Here are a few tips in how to choose the right ones. Try to use exercises that engage more than one posterior chain muscle at a time whenever possible. For example, the glute ham raise is a much better choice than leg curls. Reverse hypers are better than back extensions. Bent over rows and weighted pull-ups are better than lat pulls. After squatting or deadlifting, add a safety squat bar exercise for reps to really stimulate the posterior chain. To see what this looks like, look in our comment section below. So as a quick synopsis, use these 4 tips to strengthen your posterior chain right now. Number 1, take your time to warm up posterior chain muscles properly. Number 2, use the safety squat bar as often as possible. Number 3, train your core for strength and emphasize the obliques. And number 4, choose accessories with a posterior chain focus. Earlier in this video, I promised you some bonus content. It's a secret that will make or break your program. We just talked about the importance of adding the right accessory to strengthen your posterior chain, but there's one more step, and this is really the secret sauce. Regardless of the accessory exercise that you choose, the most muscular growth is attained by adding volume repetitions over time. This means choosing the same exercise for several weeks in a row and then adding volume to it. We usually do the same exercise for 2 to 4 weeks in a row before choosing a different one and then going from there. Here's what it looks like in a program. Week 1, tricep extensions, 3 sets of 10. Week 2, tricep extensions, 3 sets of 12. Week 3, tricep extensions, 4 sets of 10. Week 4, tricep extensions, 4 sets of 12. Take this seriously by tracking your results and you'll be amazed at the growth you get. If you like this video, we would greatly appreciate a thumbs up. For more information that will help you get stronger, healthier, and thrive in your later years, subscribe to our channel. If you have questions, you can ask them in the comment section below and we'll get right back to you, or you can email us directly at info@twofitdoctors.com.